Act 1. Hook. She stood in the rain, 10 years old, clutching a soaked envelope like it was the last thing holding her world together, and she mouthed one word through the bulletproof glass of a black SUV. Please. The man inside was a billionaire named Elliot Carrington, his suit still dry, his shoes unchanged by the puddles at his feet. He could have driven away. Instead, he opened the door, and one small wet hand changed the rest of his life, and opened a crack in a system built to look helpful and act indifferent. My name is Maya Torres. That's not the name from the headlines because this is a retelling with new faces, new streets, but the same truth. Lena, her mother used to teach first grade. She served in the reserves. Then the sickness came and the checks stopped matching the bills. They filled out the Fresh Start Fund application, the whole thing, sent proofs, stamps, signatures. And the reply came back denied incomplete, received late. Maya, who kept the appointment book and the medicine schedule for her mom, went downtown the next day to ask why. She was shoved by a valet who swore at her, "Get away from the car." And then she stood at the window of a man who'd given speeches about helping small families, and she said, "They changed the date." Elliot Carrington is the kind of man who signs big checks in public and takes good photos, the kind who names building lobbies and panels after himself. He also had the power to fix one rejected application in 2 minutes, or to ignore a child and keep his schedule. He chose to listen. When he read Lena's paperwork, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. A different handwriting over the date, a stamp that looked tampered with. He could have called security. He could have told his assistant to handle it Monday. Instead, he asked his driver to pull over, and he drove a 10-year-old girl home. That small choice is Act 1. A hook you don't see coming, but feel in your bones. It's intimate, embarrassing human. You see Elliot's hand on the steering wheel and Maya's knees folded in a too small coat, and you ask yourself which side of the glass you'd be on. Act 2. The effort and the turn. Back in his office, the thing Elliot swore he'd never ignore became an obsession. He asked for files, he bought a quiet forensic review, and he found a pattern like a trail of breadcrumbs leading to fraud. The Fresh Start Fund was real on paper, the grants showed as approved, but the checks weren't getting to people. Money went instead to Silverbridge Consulting, a small admin firm that handled processing fees and third-party verification. And the owner of Silverbridge was the brother of Vivian Hale, the woman Elliot had put in charge of the fund 2 years earlier. You can feel the twist hit like cold water. Vivian is polite, deliberate, the kind of executive who speaks in tabletop memos. When Elliot confronts her in the boardroom, this is a scene you can almost see on camera, she tilts her head and says, "We protect the program from fraud, Mr. Carrington. If I let every incomplete form through, we'd have chaos." He points at the ledger at the emails. "This is not protection, Vivian. This is theft." She smiles like a teacher correcting a child. And then she counters with a stack of authorization letters, a photocopied signature, a memo with the company's stamp. "Who put your brother on the payroll?" Elliot asks. Vivian's reply is precise, almost bored. "He was engaged as a consultant. We pay for due diligence." You feel the air constrict. The forensic auditor shows wire transfers, round-trip payments invoices for services that never happened. And the number lands like a punch, more than $1.3 million diverted in 18 months, dozens of families cut off because someone decided which applications mattered. Elliot tries the quiet fix first. He starts by restoring Lena's funds, paying overdue rent medicines, a check that reads like a lifeline. He thinks it will be enough. But Vivian, her allies on the board, and the PR machine push back. They leak a story that Elliot staged a photo op. The billionaire saves poor family narrative. The board votes to put Elliot on leave for procedural violations. The headlines call him reckless. The pundits call it a publicity stunt, and 10-year-old Maya returns to school where kids whisper, "Your friend ruined a man's career." The system fights back by weaponizing shame. This is the heart of Act 2, the long grind, the costs. Elliot loses standing. His phone rings with threats. A board member named Harold says, "You made this personal." Vivian says, "You chose a child over due process." And Maya, She sits on her bed and thinks she broke something. She wonders if speaking up is worth the storm she unleashed. You feel the internal life here. The humility of a man who had always trusted structures, the anger of a woman who learned her family was lied to, the shame of a child who only wanted someone to listen. But the pushback also wakes others. A paralegal named Marcus, who volunteers at the community shelter, recognizes the Silverbridge name from other cases. A reporter named Keisha smells a pattern. A handful of families refuse the hush money settlements and decide to tell the truth. 27 people, then 24 say no to silence. They gather in a church basement, bring their letters and their receipts, sit in folding chairs, and tell the same story in 19 variations. Missing checks, changed dates, a system that pretends to help while lining someone's pockets. Elliot joins them not as a CEO, but as a man who made a mistake. He admits he trusted the wrong people. In that room, he says quietly, "I want to make this right." The room answers, "Prove it." Act 3. The climb and the payoff. The rest is a hard public scramble. Keisha runs an investigation. Marcus files motions. The families go to a city hearing. The forensic report lands on a council table like a bomb. Vivian and her brother are indicted for wire fraud. The press stops calling it a stunt and starts calling it a scam. The Department of Justice opens a probe. The board scrambles, some resign, some plead ignorance, and Elliot, stripped of CEO armor but armed with evidence and a promise, pushes for restitution. The victory isn't cinematic only in the headlines. It's plain and small. Lena gets a check that covers overdue rent meds and a little breathing room. Maya gets new sneakers and 2 afternoons a week at an art program. The family eats a meal without counting every bite. But the real win is structural. The Fresh Start Fund becomes subject to independent audits, a recipients' advisory board is created with paid seats for beneficiaries, and a new law is proposed requiring transparency in corporate charity programs. Vivian goes to trial. The brother pleads. Fines and sentences follow. The company rebuilds with community voices at the table. And in the quiet bits, the emotional payoff, Maya stands before a room at City Hall. Microphone shaking, says, "My mom says forgiveness matters, but she also says people should be honest." The room goes quiet and then stands. It isn't a movie montage. It's a child who learned to speak and was heard, and a man who learned to listen and was changed. Closing. The open question. But it doesn't end cleanly. There are costs that don't show up on balance sheets. Reputations, bruised careers, derailed the families who accepted early settlements who never got to tell their stories. The kids who learned that power can be both a savior and a weapon. Should Elliot have risked his company the way he did? Did he act from guilt or courage? Did Maya get more than she bargained for when she tapped on a tinted window? Those are the questions you carry after the credits. So, here's what I want from you. Tell me in the comments. Was Elliot right to go public knowing he'd be crucified? Should one person with money have the right to upend an institution? Or should the work have been done quietly legally? Have you ever been in Lena's shoes, turned away by a program that promised help? And what did you do? If you've been the one to speak up, how did people treat you? If you've been the one to look away, what stopped you? If this moved you, share it, not to pat anyone on the back, but to remind people that systems are built by humans, and humans can be called out of their routines. Hit subscribe if you want more stories about ordinary people who press for basic decency and win, or lose and teach us anyway. And remember, sometimes a single please at a car window is the beginning of the fight for justice. What would you have done?